Right, but Fred's always behind the 8 ball anyway, so.
This is the revised one. Yeah, I mean, I thought of it coming. Google told me how many gallons it could be. Which is a lot.
If a lot of those properties had wells before the city water had deep water there, so I'm wondering if they have a well for that or not. It would be very easy for them to put in a well that wouldn't have to be that deep because
Right.
groundwater is fairly shallow there.
Yes.
And I know if it was my property, that's something that I would do.
Yeah.
Right.
No, what concerns me is draining the pool where that water goes.
Right.
If it passes the septic system, I would think it would destroy it.
If it went on top of it, the elevation would theoretically go under it.
But even then, do you want that kind of chlorinated water going into?
To the ACEC.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Or into Coffin Creek. A baby beach, either one, right?
Okay.
So.
That's a new and improved picture.
I can tell you're trying to think of something smart to say.
Well, if I did, that would be very unusual.
The wetlands ordinance is 200 feet to an ACEC, is that no?
And then there's 100-foot upland edge to that. So it's 300 feet conservation protection.
Yeah, but for septic specifically, it's,
You're not allowed to have any septic system within 200 feet.
right, okay.
Or-
That's what I thought.
Right,
200 feet.
right. Without a variance.
Right.
So I looked at my phone. I really want to throw this away. I'll tell you why. 6 o'clock this morning, there was not a picture of rain anywhere on my weather forecast.
Right.
What happened? Then, without with you for a little bit, and then I had to drop something off. Started downpouring in the 25 feet I had to get from my car to the building, absolutely drenched, had to go home and change. Like,
If my mother would say, you won't melt.
true.
The papers do.
It's not life threatening, but it's more, I am certain I looked. And
Right.
it was not supposed to rain today.
If you'd only asked my sinus, I could have told you.
Dan, that's why they call it weather. I don't know whether it's accurate or not.
No, I'm sitting upstairs coughing and Dick says, is it going to rain?
Interesting.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Me and Don Kent, we're just about on our par.
I thought there was a strong possibility of it, but I thought it was going to be a little later than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, clearly Steve Jobs or whoever programs the weather on my phone did not agree with you.
My wife looks, at the weather on the phone, it's, That's not what's gonna happen.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, Eric. Good. Let's see here.
First one up.
I see, could you lower the volume of the fan?
Sure. How's the temperature?
I'm
Well,
comfortable.
the temperature's good, but everybody gives us a hard time. It's nice to have some fans.
Yes,
You ready?
yeah, exactly. That's why we're lowering the fan. It's
Ready?
wise.
Ready for what? Start the meeting. I'm ready.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
All right, it's Thursday, May 23, 2024 at 3:30 PM. We'll call the Septic Subcommittee meeting to order. This is a hybrid meeting. Public is welcome to attend in person, and a Zoom link for remote access also available. Please note that the in-person meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the remote connection. So first, we'll just do roll call quickly for all the members and advisors.
Well, Dave Sargent, advisor.
Lori Curley, member.
Marco Salzillo, board member. Eric Campbell, board member. Fred Cowan, advisor.
Approval of minutes, April 25, 2024.
Nice to see you, sir.
I didn't have any comments, so I would motion to approve the minutes from April 25, 2024.
So moved.
All in favor?
Marco, yes.
Yes. Everybody else. And we have 91 Leadership Road, new construction and septic plan, for various requests. Request to situate a soil absorption system, a septic tank within a coastal resource area, barrier beach, coastal dune, where 200 feet is required with advanced treatment provided. Request to situate soil absorption system and septic tank within area of land subject to coastal storm flowage, where 200 feet is required and bottom of field above elevation 13. Request to situate leach area within 20 feet of habitable space, 10 feet provided. And discussion regarding ACC elevation boundary and whether a variance will be required or not. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Judd, engineer with Gateway Consultants, representing the Davis family with their property at 91 Winger Sheep Road. As shown on the screen that Leslie has put up, you see there's a proposed ADU accessory dwelling unit that's proposed in the front of the lot. So this is sheet 2 of the plans. The overall lot includes an existing dwelling, which is just to the, thank you, Leslie. You can see seaward toward Coffin's Beach is the existing dwelling, and then there's a proposed ADU toward the back of the property, which is currently covered by a tennis court. So we actually did test pits through the tennis court. They had a saw out there. Tony Gigaloni's here. He was there assisting us, and his brother Vito digging the holes there. So obviously we found sand out here, less than 2 minutes per inch per, typical for this area. This is all barrier beach, as the chair has noted. And as part of this, this is a proposed 3-bedroom septic system to propose to serve the new ADU. This would be a system that would have advanced treatment, as we typically do down on the beach, and would be elevated. And we have to do a 3-bedroom minimum as required by Title V. So that's why we're showing the leach field as it is there. It would be raised slightly to be above the groundwater. So we're not looking for any variances from Title V in respect to the standards for a new construction system. However, under the local regs, as pointed out in the agenda, we're looking for, to situate the leaching area within a barrier beach. Of course, all of the systems on this section are within barrier beach, and this is what we've done, historically done. And then to allow under the local regs, this is a slab on grade, by the way, proposed accessory dwelling. So it'd be a garage, and then they'd have some workout space in the back. So that would be on slab, but we're requesting, even though Title V allows 10 feet, we're looking for variance from the local regs that require 20 feet from a habitable space. And we're below the slab with that, or at the same elevation, I should say. We're at the slab elevation's at 14.5. And the bottom of the field is at 14.3, so it's slightly below. We would have a barrier around the system to prevent any lateral movement of any effluent associated with that leaching field. And again, as pointed out, you can see the dark dash line that goes through. That is elevation 13, and we are partially, about half the field is approximately is in the land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is elevation 13 per the FEMA maps. And those are the proposed variances, and I can answer any questions you might have.
You want me to just?
Sure.
John, I was, thank you. In the Form 11 for the soil plans
Yes.
that was submitted, it's different from, and I agree that it's sand.
Yeah.
But in those forms, it said it was sandy loam.
Oh, okay. Check that
And
out.
and that needs to be changed so that it's
Yeah, was that, I'm sorry, was that maybe the upper layer, or was it definitely the, okay,
all the way through.
okay, all right,
And,
so
you
that's
know,
an error.
I mean, I heard, less than 2 minutes on it, I'm
Yeah.
going sandy loam, and
Right,
I'm trying to figure out all of this, so that needs to be
yep.
somehow
Corrected.
changed. And so that it's consistent with what's on the plan,
Absolutely.
right? One of the things, and I'm just throwing this out for people to think about, is the bottom of the field is above the flood elevation of 13.
Yes.
And this is a new issue for us, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this.
Yep.
And the setbacks are horizontal, and I keep on thinking about a vertical separation. And we normally do variances so that systems are 2 feet above seasonally high groundwater. I'm wondering if you added a couple of inches to it so that the bottom of the field was 2 inches above elevation, 2 feet above elevation 13. And I think that could easily be done. And I'm wondering if the Septic Advisory Commission might consider that as something, we can consider. And I noticed that there's also a barrier in case, the flood comes in. But just adding a couple of inches would make that 2 feet above elevation 13.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm wondering if people may want to look at this for future, projects as well, because now we're dealing with a vertical separation rather than a horizontal separation. And in some instances, if you've got like a cliff face, you could have the horizontal and it would mean nothing, so. And I'd much rather look at a vertical separation.
So just so I understand, we have the bottom of the field at 14.3, the FEMA elevation is 13.0, and you're looking for 14.5?
Or maybe 15.
15.
2 feet, yeah.
That's, we're here with our hat in our hands, so
Well,
we're.
what I'm doing is I'm trying to untie this Gordian knot.
Yep.
Of what's before us now with land, subject to coastal storm flowage, and how we're dealing with this. And I've talked to Thor about this a bit, and Leslie, and in my mind, it's better to think about a vertical separation rather than a horizontal separation. This being said, as long as it's not in a velocity zone. Right,
Sure.
velocity zone, it would be
Different, yeah.
completely different, but if we're talking about, an AE, flood zone. I'm just trying to figure out how, we may just have a policy or something, so I'm throwing that out there for people to think about. Because it seems to fall in line with, the variances that we have from 2 feet above seasonally high groundwater.
No problem on our end.
Okay,
Yeah, Dave, I kind of agree with your sentiment, just so you guys are aware, this is kind of one of those ones that now is triggered by coastal resource areas having a 200-foot setback under the local Board of Health regulations. So although dune, barrier beach, and land subject to cold storm flowage wasn't previously under our purview, and aren't under the purview of Title V generally. There aren't any setbacks for those areas, but there are under our regulations. So this is one of the first we've seen, and I agree the vertical separation seems to make sense, and the elevation 13 is a 100-year storm, so it's a pretty unlikely scenario, of course, but in an abundance of caution, I think having some kind of vertical separation there makes sense. And I know historically, as a board, not since I've been here, but there have been a lot of new construction projects on Wingershik Road and on Coastal Dune and Gloucester, and I think we all recognize the sensitivity of the area and importance of the area, but to me, it's there aren't any setbacks in Title V, and I think when we do get advanced treatment, we do get an enhanced separation to groundwater. Personally, I feel okay with it. Just given the way our regulations are written, they're under our purview now a little more than they were, or what we believe they were in the past. They were always under, but so I think to me, I kind of feel okay about it. Given all of that, discussing it further and.
Good. I could give a crack at this, just because we have an opportunity. The swimming pool concerns me.
Okay.
How does it drain?
Well, they keep it full, otherwise buoyancy would, so during the off season, they'll drain it down a certain point. Is that what you're talking about?
Where does the water go?
That I don't know. I cannot. So, Tony?
Yeah, they have a pump company that comes in, like most pools. I mean, they would never drain a pumping company, the same way they fill a pool.
So there's no drain on the pool?
Correct. They have a company that comes and maintains it. There's a pump truck that will pump the water out. It's called a pump.
That solves my problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony.
Good question.
Yeah. So, well, I had visions of chlorinated water floating over. Okay. No, well, good.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. He's more familiar with the property.
Thank you.
In terms of the maintenance.
Okay.
Anyone else have any?
That's it.
do we want to talk about the ACEC elevation now, or?
So I assume the variance requests, that wasn't part of this, it's more, does it need to be requested or not? Is that how?
Well, if I could, maybe I don't want
Sure, go right ahead.
to, so what I did, and I submitted all this digitally, I'll hand out. What I had, this is the same thing I gave digitally, by the way, this is just basically some information, and Dave and Thor are quite familiar with this. Historically, how the ACEC in this area, so this is mapped area in the general Farm Creek areas, they call area of critical environmental concern. There's different ACECs throughout Massachusetts. One is down on the South Shore, which is basically that whole area of Barnstable.
Yep.
For obvious protection of areas of critical environmental concern. So there's just the first sheet of when this was legislated in 1979 for the Essex Bay area, Parker River. a portion of which exists in Gloucester. For the most part, it extends along the Great Marsh northward. There's quite a bit of it in Ipswich, Essex, basically that whole coastline. And it was designated back in 79 as being elevation 10 is our boundary of that, based on the 1929 NGVD datum. And that's just, again, I highlighted the first sheet and then the definition and when that was promulgated back in 79. So what we typically do, the first sheet of this is the GIS map. And you can see on that, there's a hatch line that shows the mass mapper GIS, what we use the GIS boundary, which is, I think we can all agree, is a general reference where it exists in the Commonwealth. And they have this mapped, and they have South Shore, Cape Cod, and all mapped with different ACs. There's some in inland too, out near Quabbin, in that area too. So for the watershed purposes. So this clearly is associated with shellfish, et cetera, the Great Marsh. What we're here to discuss, and we've gone back and forth with some emails, Leslie and I and Thor and Dave, just an interpretation of where that is based on the NAVD 1988 data, which in 2014, all flood maps, FEMA maps, and the GIS datum, as well as the city datum, is now on what we call NAVD, North American Vertical Datum of 1988. When they changed that datum, that everything was adjusted down to about 0.8 feet. So now it's what was elevation 10 is now elevation 9.2. So we're talking about within a foot, but it makes a big difference in terms of the horizontal setback. If you look at the map, so this hatch line is again where they recognize it on GIS, which is a rudimentary line. We all agree on that. And then what I've done is we've shown the 200-foot setback for what I believe is 9.2 ACEC, and that's what we're here to discuss. And I have a feeling Dave's going to have some thoughts on this. So, but this is just where we are right now. So. And I'll leave it to the board.
I saw the email chain and I know you and Chuck have been discussing these.
Yep.
Things about, Wingersheek, even 11 Wingersheek, there was a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
And the last email that I saw from the ACEC program said that you have to use elevation 10 now.
Right.
And if Concom's using that, the city has to use whatever Conservation Commission uses as the elevation.
Okay, so I did see that response from them, and the question is, they never answered that question, NAVD 88 or 1920, because it makes a huge difference,
Yes, it does,
as
right.
you know.
So that really needs to get settled.
Okay.
So, it's just, it's not our call.
I was gonna say, whose call is that?
It's the ACEC program's call,
Okay.
right? It isn't Conservation Commission's call either. They take it from the ACEC program, what the elevation is, what's jurisdictional. They inform Concom and we have to follow in line with.
Is that question on their agenda?
I think it was, and I think you want to follow up.
Well, it was, so a little bit of history. Chuck Shade, this all sort of came up. Chuck Shade is the conservation administrator for the conservation in Gloucester. And he reached out to them. They took a while to get back. There was an email sent, and I'm not sure I made a copy of that.
I have some of them here.
Okay, it's really just a response. And
Okay.
in my opinion, that didn't really answer the question that, and jump in if you disagree, but it was very succinct. What his question was, is it NAVD or is it NGVD? Which datum are we holding? And they kind of said, thank you for your inquiry. And,
Their call is important to us.
we appreciate your vote. It was kind of generalized and it was above, but they didn't specifically answer the datum question. I do know that in my work in Ipswich, and I know there's an engineer in the room that does some work in Ipswich too. But there's, you know, they had been recognizing 9.2 as
They are.
associated, but, you know, I'm not gonna put anyone on the spot, but I was looking for their bylaw and their definition in Ipswich. It's not our bylaw. I think it needs to be established. It has to be established going forward.
Okay.
And it'd be nice to have it in the local ordinance, when I say local ordinance, because
Right.
this board follows the definition under the local
Right, yeah.
conservation. And, you know, I agree, and I've been trying to get that response.
Right, that's where it is.
Right,
Is, you know, there needs to be follow-up, you know, to make it crystal clear,
right,
so that, and I understand historically, people have been using 9.2, whether it's been accurate or not, it's up to the ACEC
right.
program.
So we need a response from them.
Have you clients that you cannot work with because you don't have this data?
This is.
Is it interrupting your business?
No, this is the first,
Okay.
because it's critical in this situation. The reason being, this board and these regulations under the local Gloucester Board of Health regulations, and the local wetlands ordinance, have a prohibition of leaching facilities
Yeah.
within 200 feet.
Yeah.
So as I pointed out here,
There you are.
you know, otherwise a variance is needed, and I'm not sure it has ever been granted by this board. I think other people may know if something has been granted within 200 feet for new construction.
Well, new construction is a little bit different.
It's different, yeah,
I know it has a lot of times for upgrades.
for upgrades,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
New construction.
I can't recall that it has been done. I can't recall that it
Yeah.
has.
I can think of one site.
Okay,
I might be able to shed some light on this
Thank you, Dan.
situation, if that would be helpful.
Please.
Sure, Dan, yeah.
So, as John alluded to, I do have some experiences with this subject just recently on a project in Ipswich. I don't know if you're clairvoyant or you.
No, I just know you work. you
So,
work in Ipswich.
it's, the analogy I make to people is you might remember in the 1970s, we were maybe gonna turn to a metric system. And so the speed limit changed from 55 miles an hour to 85 kilometers per hour, whatever. But your car is not supposed to go faster than that speed, no matter how it gets described. And it's the same thing with the ACEC boundary. It's a particular elevation, a particular height of the ground, whether it's measured on a survey datum that was developed in 1929 or a survey datum that's more recent, it's still the same line on the ground, it's just labeled differently. So I've never had a need to explain that, like it's very clear in the survey literature and the federal government, you know, the difference between the two datums. And so surveyors and engineers all the time transfer between those two. And as John indicated, it's a difference of about 0.8 feet. So it's pretty routine. And I think it's just common to take the elevation 10, subtract 0.8 and use 9.2. That's certainly what I've used here in Gloucester. I've used it in Ipswich. It's never been an issue.
the problem with that argument is it's illogical.
Sorry.
And it's two steps instead of one,
But
because you start off with, you have to go through a mathematical process.
it's the, so we do that for, there are still some other times where we have to use the old survey datum as well. And then we automatically subtract 0.8. So it's done for other purposes as well as the ACEC. And it's just, it happens.
It's a step.
Right, but what we need clarity from the ACEC program. You know, we can't change our ordinance because Dan Ottenheimer said.
Right, but I think what might be helpful, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, but there is material from the US Genetic Survey or whatever that describes the difference between the two datums and basically says this is how to make them comparable to each other.
And that might be fine if the
Yeah.
ACEC program was not already involved in this discussion.
Okay,
They're already involved in this discussion and they're the kingmaker.
right. And you're right, this can't be the first time it's come up. Why haven't they just
Right, so,
outright said it?
you know, we need a response from them.
Right. It's really, it's,
So does the city cluster have a petition before them for a decision?
Well, we have this email chain,
Okay,
and it seemed like everybody who was on it said the same thing. She didn't really answer the question that we need the answer to.
okay.
So I think we could go back. But I do think this same project is coming to conservation, so I would think that,
I don't know.
It is, yeah, it has to. Yes, the
Well,
answer is yes.
Is it going there before it's coming back here or?
Sure.
We typically do not go before Concom without.
Right, usually
approval.
that's the last.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
usually the last because,
Yeah.
Mr. Judd, why are you here? You're not approved by the Board of Health.
That's right,
you know?
yeah.
So it's the cart before the horse thing, so. That's typically what I've done, and that's the way I read the Wetland Protection
Yep,
Act,
yep.
it's usually the last step.
But we need that answer, you know.
so I'll go back to the folks, Isaac and Devin, who were emailing and Chuck with Nancy at the ACDC program and say, can we get an answer to this? Because we're in limbo on this septic
Yeah,
project.
absolutely.
Yeah, so, just a little bit more history, so. In the email change, Leslie asked, she goes, should you add that to the plan? And I said, well, I don't think it's appropriate for us or the client to put them in that situation, asking for a variance we're not sure we need, you know? So I think we've accomplished a lot, I understand that, but I hit loud and clear, we need to get that. Is it possible to vote on these and then, if it's not needed?
Well, I think you have to, you know, add elevation to the field anyway.
Yes.
And you have to, change the, you know, the soil, Form 11.
Yep.
Right, so that needs to be done anyway.
Yep.
So. Those two things need to be done.
Okay,
So I'm wondering if you did that and then came back before us,
okay.
you may have the answer to the ACEC program at that time.
Okay, yeah, I'll reach out to that particular person. I'm not sure if has the background or if she's more of an administrator or she understands, you know, in Dan's very layman terms, which makes all the sense.
Right.
Is it too many things to vote on and move forward with? And say, once the soils come back corrected, the soil logs, adding the elevation change to make it a 2 foot to the floodplain elevation?
You know, approving things based on conditions that you're going to
Yeah.
see in the future is always a slippery slope.
Okay.
And in as much as we need the answer to the ACEC program,
Yeah.
it makes sense to come back anyway.
Yep.
For that, because he's gonna have to come back for that question one way or another. But I think he got a sense of how we're feeling, you know, about, you know, new construction, you know, in this area. I think that's important, you know, for you as well as the client.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if we can't get that direct answer and maybe we can come in with some more supporting information. But yeah, it sounds like you need something signed by the governor or something.
Well, you know, I wouldn't mind if it were Frank Sargent, but, you know, the previous governor, but.
And that's why I included that excerpt from 1979. You know, I mean, as far as when the statute was
That was
signed.
King.
It might have been.
It was King, yeah, it was. I remember him well.
So,
So one clarifying question, so are we planning on treating the ACC as a coastal resource area and therefore as a 200 foot jurisdiction for the Board of Health as well? Is that kind of, is that what's being implied?
I think so.
Yes.
Why, okay,
What are you
That's how it's
thinking?
been done in the past.
okay.
and that's why, again, we haven't requested that variance because it was always, and in fact, we showed on the plan 200 feet.
Yeah.
Right.
But, the whole ACEC delineation came into question, and this is how we've always been doing, because it's never been really critical. This is the first one where it's critical,
Right.
under the Gloucester.
As you rightly said, you're gonna need that information anyway, when eventually it goes before Conservation Commission. So, it doesn't make sense to have half a step forward and 5 steps back. So
Yeah,
Thank you for doing this.
yeah. So we'll, let me work on that. And how often does this board meet? Is it once a month or is it?
Once a month.
Once a month, so.
Sean, that puts us back another whole month. I mean, is it possible?
It can be as needed.
Is it possible to approve this with the condition of getting that answer? I mean, since it's
Yes.
the first one.
But that's a slippery slope, approving things based on conditions.
But if we don't get that approval, then obviously we'd have to maybe come back and revisit it. But I would think if we get that answer that we're looking for, at least losing a month puts us into, now we're getting into fall as the building. I mean, there's a lot of things that this is concerning, is getting things done as well.
As needed.
Well, right, but we didn't cause this problem.
I totally understand
Right,
that.
right.
I do understand that. I'm just trying to, it seems like, I think the few revisions he has to make on the plan is something that we've already agreed on, that can be done simply. If we're just waiting for an answer, we can move this forward with that condition. If we get the answer that's just not what you're looking for, then of course we have to revisit this. But if we get that answer, at least we don't have to come back here. We can move forward with conservation.
This is an important issue. Even if you go through Conservation Commission, there's a 30-day appeal period and everything else like that, and you're looking at the fall anyway.
Right, but coming back here again is another month ahead. You know what I'm saying? If you're meeting once a month, that's all I'm saying.
I mean, you're not going to be.
I totally respect this, sir. I'm
Right.
just asking a question.
Right, well, you're not going to be installing this during, the summer beach season.
I had my sunglasses ready and everything. Don't say that.
Right, well, I hate to rain on your parade, but
I mean, if you hear back from ACC tomorrow, you can file Concom and, you know what I mean, like, you
Yeah.
can, it's
Yeah,
not
we can.
against, not against the law, so.
Right.
right.
In that
yeah.
respect, you can
Get that.
move
motion.
forward with
Okay.
that at
Yeah,
least.
that's good.
We're defining ourselves as irrelevant.
No. I don't think so. No, thank you for the time and that gives us good direction and we'll just do everything we can for get something in writing from that individual. I know I have that email. I'll track her down.
Is that stalking? What do you mean you could track her down?
No, wait a minute. You could also. Not an answer, you could be heard at the next Board of Health meeting. When's that?
26.
That is an option.
That is
I've
an
done that
option.
before.
Right, that's an option.
It tends to make things more complicated. I would recommend just coming back to this group.
But it's an avenue.
It is.
I like Thor's, get in front of the Concom as soon as we get any kind of indication. Dave's recommendations are very easy. That'll be done tomorrow,
Right.
so that's not an
Well,
issue.
one's a recommendation, the other is a,
Requirement.
it's an error, in the submittal, on the soils.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. You want to hang around for yours in case they have.
Do you want to sing Kumbaya?
Okay.
Have a great weekend.
Goodbye.
More of that.
She's not here. So it's just-
See you, John.
I was gonna make her a panelist if she wanted to talk. She was your person.
Now.
Yes.
Yeah.
They gone.
David.
Is this not a self-imposed hardship?
I'm answering him.
Right.
What you can do is say by general agreement. Or you could motion to continue.
Yeah.
Be up to you. On how to deal with that.
Okay.
How do you want to deal with it?
General agreement.
Okay, by general
Sounds-
agreement.
Sounds good.
David, is
Yes.
this not a self-imposed hardship? The variance,
To a certain degree, yes, it is.
that's what I thought.
Right, yeah. Also, I'm reminded of,
It's a good teaching tool.
a big plaque.
It's a teaching tool.
Well, a big plaque that used to be at the engineering department when we were trailer trash.
Yeah.
They were at the DPW. And it used to say, your lack of planning is not my hardship.
And proximity of the septic system to the new construction, which is residence. Needing a variance to Gloucester regulation is a self-imposed hardship.
It could be. All right,
We can ask that, we should ask
Because
that,
it's within Title V, I was silent, but,
we should ask that question.
pardon me?
Go ahead, sorry.
Because it's within Title, because it needs Title V, I didn't bring that up while I was here, but in fact, when you're looking for a variance from the Gloucester regulation where you have more flexibility, it is a self-imposed hardship.
Yes, to a certain degree.
It's new construction next to a septic system.
This would be a no-brainer if it was an upgrade.
Right. But it isn't,
It isn't.
and it's another 220 gallons a day going into.
330,
3-bedroom it is?
yes.
I thought they were only putting 2 bedrooms in the facility.
Well, it's a 3-bedroom design.
Okay, so potential of another 330 gallons going into the environment
Correct.
for a self-imposed hardship.
Correct.
Okay.
Louis McGrath talking about.
Yes. So a different part of the ACEC, but there is, I mentioned earlier, there is one site that the board did grant the variances for new construction, but it's not the norm of that. So
Okay,
it's on a case by case basis. That's what a variance is, right? It should be.
Yeah,
looked at.
and unfortunately, it's a moving target, you know, it's not like, you know, this is how it is, which creates some problems.
All right, we have 18 Marbury Heights Road septic upgrade plan with variance requests, represented by Dan Ottenheimer. Request to reduce setback from soil absorption system to habitable space. Building foundation from 20 to 13 feet. Request to reduce O&M service visits from 4 times per year to 1 time per year. And to eliminate effluent sampling. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you. Board members, good evening, good afternoon, sorry, Leslie, hello. Dan Ottenheimer, Mill River Consulting. There is no self-induced hardship here. You still might not grant the variances, but there is no self-induced hardship here. So this is an existing house,
Yep.
4-bedroom house. We're looking to upgrade the on-site system. Some of the limitations associated with the property is 2 neighbors over here have wells. So what's shown in green here are the 250-foot well setbacks. So that kind of eliminates this whole portion of the property from doing anything. And then Washington Street is down here. It's about 30 or 40 feet lower in elevation. It's a very steep drop off over here. So we're confined in terms of the area where we can do this upgrade. So we did soil tests. We've got a location over here. We're proposing to obviously abandon. They currently have a cesspool here and a tank and a leach pit out front. That would all be abandoned. The internal plumbing would all be tied in one direction. Go here to a new tank, and then here to 2 leaching trenches using the Elgin system, which you may or may not be familiar with. You're probably familiar with the Presby Septic, and this is very similar, essentially a competitor, just not owned by a hedge fund in North Carolina. It's actually owned by real people. So that's the.
They're real people too.
My uncle's a hedge fund.
Sorry to just be so dismissive. So the first variance is the distance from the leach trench to the house. We comply with the standard in Title V.
Yeah.
But not the local regulation, but as Fred just mimicked, we are 12 feet, the leach field is 12 feet higher than the basement floor, I mean, lower than the basement floor.
Yeah.
And everything's down gradient, so I think the risk is very slight there, so I'd encourage you to feel comfortable granting that. The second relates to the regulation that the Board of Health adopted when some knucklehead was the health director and subsequently revised a little bit about treatment systems, right? So at the time that the board adopted it, this whole concept of treatment systems was new, wasn't sure how it was gonna work. DEP had said, we want all of these, the Singulaire and the Waterloo to be checked on twice a year. And Gloucester said, well, this whole thing is brand new to us. We're gonna want it 4 times a year to make sure it's properly functioning. And that's still on the books here. And the vision back when this was adopted was really for a treatment system, a tank that has blowers and bubblers or media in there that treats the wastewater. The regulation, these types of systems didn't even exist when the regulation was adopted. So the Gloucester rules have kind of 2 things that don't always jive with a situation like this. So one, they require a wastewater treatment plant operator to come 4 times a year to make sure all the pumps and blowers and everything are working. but there are no pumps or blowers or anything here. So it kind of just doesn't make sense in that regard. And the second thing is this Gloucester regulation says that effluent should be sampled and taken to a lab to make sure that what's coming out of the treatment unit is acceptable quality. But again, there's no treatment unit here as well. So it's a little bit of trying, trying to not have a square peg trying to be forced into a round hole. So I wanted to open that up for discussion by requesting a variance to what I think is prudent. Obviously, it's ultimately your decision. So what I think is prudent in situations like this is to have somebody come once a year, open up the distribution box, make sure there's no backup of effluent, which would indicate a severe clogging situation, and document that and send that to your office. And I don't think there's no effluent sampling that's reasonably able to be acquired. So I don't think that that's prudent with a type of system like this. So that's the variance request, is to have a once a year examination and no sampling of the wastewater.
We insisted that Presby put a sampling port on. Why can't that happen here?
It could. My understanding is much of the time, they don't even get effluent in some of those sample collection devices. Because they have a 2 by 2 foot pan underneath the 50-foot long leach trench. So if the effluent happens to go in that spot, they'll get water. If it doesn't, then they won't get water. So it's not it's not always dependable. I don't think the companies that do that work get results all the time.
Okay.
That's what we're hearing from Clearwater, Switch, who does, they try to do the sampling, and so they can't find any effluent. So and then the people they're stuck in the quarterly inspections, because we say, once you get some good samples, then we can reduce your sampling frequency, but they're sort of stuck in limbo in doing quarterly inspections.
I think they could still ask for a variance.
I think they can too, and
Right.
I've conveyed that to the folks, but I don't know if it's
I
made its way
I
back.
did want to talk about this later, the Presby thing specifically.
Right,
Um,
and let's say the Presby was not working properly, and I have noticed that in my experience, there've been a few that didn't.
Okay.
And if they're clogged and there was carryover, then obviously there would be effluent, where you would be sampling it. And that would be an indication maybe that it's not working properly.
Yeah.
And this, the Elgin also has inspection ports. And I look at the state approval, and it says that if the level in the inspection ports is too high, then you have to come back and inspect it within 30 days, and stuff like that.
Right.
And some knucklehead, when he was the Board of Health Director, told me that for systems to last, it is a 3-legged stool. It has to be designed properly, installed properly, and maintained properly. And what you're sort of suggesting is one of those legs be a little shorter. And I can tell you physically, that doesn't work for me, because I have one leg that's shorter. So in order to keep things on an even plane, I would at least suggest that part of the O&M may or may not include effluent, testing, because it's newly installed, and if there was carryover and it wasn't working, maybe surface breakout, maybe smells, maybe odors, and then in a year's time, people could come back and ask for a reduction in that. But you want to make sure that it's installed properly, and the only way to do that is through, start up, O&M.
So I'm trying to follow. Sorry, I didn't fully follow that. So yeah, I'm not saying there shouldn't be O&M if that's where you're.
I'm not thinking quarterly O&M as
The first year.
for the first year, and then come back.
We typically require for the first 2 years, is that correct?
No, I think
Or is
it's,
it just for the first year?
And while you're pondering that, what's the equal degree of protection then when you can't test this system?
So That's been.
I don't think I've ever seen a
Orders, so
request
Right,
not
20
to
years.
test
And
for
then you
F.
can get a reduction.
Right,
So
just a
twice.
reduction of just
I mean,
one.
otherwise it's
year.
basically
Right,
it would
so,
be a
yeah.
conventional system,
Yeah.
and I would be
But
free
you can't
aware.
test it. This has to be tested.
But
So you don't
but this
test
is being touted as being
Okay.
an upgrade,
You don't do the.
an improvement
you
over a
do-
conventional system, but you
regular
can't prove that it's working.
Maybe,
You can't convince me that it's
Maybe.
working.
Right.
Why should
so.
I believe you, but I don't believe the machine.
So I would say this, the DEP would not have granted their overall approval for use in Massachusetts if it hadn't been demonstrated at the Massachusetts Test Center and other locations that this concept works.
But the significance of the degree of pollution that could be happening over the next 20 years from a 4-bedroom house is significant.
Mhm.
And the geology is very different than what the EP is usually dealing with.
That is 100% correct.
So there you
Yes.
But there's a twofer. I'm really worried about a system that you can't test.
Okay,
Dan, what is the O&M requirements for the state for Elgins?
there's none that I'm aware of.
Well, I read it.
Yeah,
And,
I forgot to bring them, so thank you, please.
right, well, it was included in, the packet.
I know, I just had to grab it.
And one of the things was to look at the inspection ports to see if the levels were, too high or not.
On an annual basis?
No one when there was an inspection.
Oh, it's at the time of
What was the-
transfer or
what was
something,
the
correct,
frequency
yes.
of
Oh, the
inspection?
frequency.
Yeah.
Oh,
Required by the state.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
I'm not sure. on
Are you
that.
really
I
wedded to
don't think
this
they
technology?
require it. I don't think they require it for Presby.
I don't think they do either. So
Correct.
then I would say,
Right.
Fred, to your point, I
Yeah.
kind of agree with Dan, like doing an inspection report under the Presby or an Elgin, it just doesn't make sense. Like you can put it right at the start of by the D box where effluent, you should hit effluent, but
Yes.
these systems work by progressively failing.
I understand.
So
Right,
after the first year or whatever, you're not gonna get really much in that tray at any point.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why
So, are you really wedded to this technology? Why not a water?
Right, so in this instance, the owners don't live here. This is a rental
Mhm.
and they are,
God, all the more reason to have testing.
maybe all the more reason to have O and M, not so much
Tenants
testing.
who are not owners.
So their concern is pumps. So if we used a treatment system of some sort, it
Yes.
would involve like an Advantex or a Waterloo
Yeah.
would have pumps involved.
Yes.
And so that's a considerable concern to them. So that's why I came with this approach.
Dan, why even, just out of curiosity, why even use an alternative field? Was it just for the size?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
So there's no resource areas, it's just to get a smaller size.
so that's a very steep embankment.
Yeah.
A lot of houses.
Right, if you have
below.
surface breakout, it's
Right.
right there, right?
Yeah, a lot of
Yes,
houses
of
below.
course.
I'm so sorry they didn't run a sewer line. Really, it's a lot of houses. I'd forgotten how many. I know the man who owned the house long ago. Michael Madden.
Yes, correct, right, yes.
So when I pulled it, when I got up and took one look at it, I don't need to get out of the car. But, yeah, I've said my concern.
So I think the bigger picture for this board to consider doesn't have to be related to this project is whether the level of stringency that was adopted in 1996 is still relevant today. Right, so I don't know whether you still need quarterly visits to a Waterloo and Advantex or something like that when there are thousands of them all over and the state had reduced their maintenance visit requirement from twice a year to once a year.
Yep.
I do think it might be considerable and potentially unnecessary weight that's being placed on Gloucester property owners. Again, separate from this project, but just something I would encourage the board to think about.
We often have to endure those two tendencies in a year. Behavior of the resident. People are in for summer, they own it, then they rent it all, went on to a different family, different behavior,
Right.
whatnot.
Right.
Who could well destroy the system when the owner isn't there. This has got tenants in it.
Yeah, well, currently just one tenant, but it could be more, understood.
Right, the financial hardship, I don't really think carries weight because 1 year's O and M is pretty close to a 1 year sewer bill. So, after 1 year, I would really like it if I could ask for a reduction on my sewer bill where I wouldn't have to pay. But in this instance, what you're doing is this is a guarantee
Yeah,
to the homeowner that the system, a better guarantee that the system is working properly on stairs. So I strongly recommend that there at least be, not necessarily effluent testing, but people inspect it as best they can, particularly seeing as how it's, a rental.
and the idea of pumps being the controlling factor,
Okay.
that's not modern, that's not modern thinking. And the systems that you have, they don't fail, those pumps don't fail.
Correct. Very strong track record, just
Yeah,
in this instance.
Particularly if it's gonna be inspected, say, annually,
So, thank you.
trade-off.
So thank you. I'm gonna take a step back.
Yeah.
I had not, obviously, I rarely come before you for variances along these lines. I wanted to flesh it out. So I'm hearing that this is not something that is conducive. So I will put some type of collection system underneath there and we'll follow what's in the regulation and withdraw that particular variance request.
I don't feel like that you should put a collection system under there. I don't think it makes sense.
But if he wants to,
If you want to do it,
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna stop you, but I don't think.
Oh, no, I'm in favor of changing the technology,
Oh, you wanna change,
absolutely.
I-
Absolutely. Have to be able to test this thing.
Yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the
That's-
same thing that you would require for a Presby. We're gonna put
But
a
I'm
collection.
now learning that doesn't work.
So what we do is, and it's gonna come up in the next one that we're gonna talk about, we say to the engineer, please put the collection system as close as possible to the distribution box, so that at least for the first year, you can collect samples.
and then after that, you get nothing.
And then after that, you won't get anything, but they'll be reduced.
Fred, I don't think it's in our purview to say, I mean, it is, but I don't think we should,
yes,
I don't think
yes.
we should be able to say. DEP's approved this, you should, like, this design.
Totally you can.
But it
That's what
complies,
you're here for.
I know, but there's no, the only reason they're using it is to get a field reduction, there's no resource areas or. There's no variance request other than that. And I'm fine discussing the monitoring requirements, like personally, like if we wanna have enhanced, don't wanna grant the reduction in monitoring, but.
But I'm hearing that if they were to put a port in for testing, that it
Yeah.
would not give you a reliable answer. Correct?
It's because it works so well, actually, though. It's actually because the system works so well that the water dissipates throughout the sand and it doesn't collect in
But how
one spot.
about they pour turpentine down the drain?
right, that would kill the biomat, and then you would have it at the very end where the sampling port is, right? Because once you kill the biomat, you're not gonna have treatment,
Exactly.
so that'd be that carryover,
Exactly.
right?
And it would eventually reestablish, right? It's not like,
Yes, I'm just thinking a tenant
yep,
who's used to a sewer system in Manhattan.
Push turpentine down the drain.
Yes, what else would you do? You live on the 12th floor.
I've had tenants who didn't realize they couldn't flush tuna fish subs down it,
Really,
You do
this is
that?
worst case scenario. Okay, it's my job to be worst case scenario.
Yeah, I'm not putting up a strong argument, as you can hear me, so.
And I'm discouraged to hear that the Presby system port, isn't producing an answer. And I'm glad to hear that it's because the system is working so well, but yeah, just from the board's history standpoint, when Presby first appeared, it had no port on it. We wouldn't approve it until they put a port on, and now they've changed the design.
Yep.
And the records will show that for a long time, a board member always asked, is this the one that has a testing port in it?
Yeah.
No one ever said that. It didn't work.
Isaac just found out about, I don't know, 4 months ago, he
Oh,
was
okay.
making inquiries about, for some reason with Clearwater, and he reported that back to me. So since
Okay.
then, I've been
But we've had 20
telling
years of
the
blindness.
engineers to locate it closer to the D box.
Just, he has other options besides this technology that I know work and can be tested.
well, how about if we leave it that he's going to be coming back?
Yes.
Right, and I think, I agree with you on one level, but on the other level, it's always a slippery slope to design the system. You know, for the city to, because then it's hard to deny it. You know, if you designed it.
I don't feel like,
So I would like to withdraw my variance request, please, for reducing the maintenance frequency. That's clear, I kicked the hornet's nest, I'm sorry about that, though I do think it's a discussion worth having in the bigger picture. So I'd like to withdraw that and just ask your consideration on the distance from the soil absorption system.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah.
I would motion to approve the setback from the soil absorption system to habitable space building foundation from 20 feet to 13 feet.
Second.
All in favor, Dor, yes?
Marco, yes. Eric, yes.
And I encourage you to just have the record show that the applicant withdrew that variance
Yeah,
request, so it's clear, and I will produce a revised plan that has that.
Yep.
No look.
Okay.
express my concern to your client, really,
So,
we're not
so
coming.
they're actually from Worcester also, and here's this is their saga, which is, so. They live on a state road, I don't know where it is, but their septic system had some issues. The health department there required them to connect to the sanitary sewer. Sanitary sewer did not run in front of their house,
Wow.
and we know that you can't require that, you can only require it.
That's right.
But they did, so they had to pay to dig up a state road with state troopers and
What?
everything to make a sewer extension.
We're not that bad.
So this is and they just had to do this last year, and they don't necessarily even have the money to do this, they told me, because they spent so much on their house in Worcester. So this is a very sensitive subject for them, so.
So,
Tell them I share their sensitivity.
So, thank you.
Yes,
So it serves them right for living in Worcester.
I'm from there.
Yes.
Oh, it's an amazing, so that's another subject. It's a city on the upswing.
So this plan isn't coming back before us, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Any city I've ever
We
seen.
granted the variances, and that's it.
Very singular.
Yeah.
So you'll put in the treatment
My younger brother's.
Yeah.
I know,
collection.
The collection, I think,
Honestly, that's an
and then I'll be able to review and
I
approve.
don't have lunch with
They
him,
can't do it.
we never eat in the same restaurant.
Excellent,
All right.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, we're approaching the subject. I encouraged him.
You're right.
She said she has
Dan, don't be so hard on that knucklehead.
Say what?
He said, don't be so hard on that knucklehead, it used to be the health director.
Him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he told me. Oh, yeah. And I became chairman about 3 minutes after I went on the board.
Right.
He saved. He did, he taught me how to be, be some very important, yeah. And Louis McGrath.
Yeah, Lou really, he ran a very good meeting.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and he's the one who taught me, like, the
Yeah.
role of the chair is to run the meeting, not to like get in the weeds on a particular
That's right.
That's right,
subject.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And we were trailer trash.
We were trailer trash. That's what Joe
Never been in a
Guzzo,
trailer.
right,
And I was good.
that's what Joe Guzzo said when we moved to Pond Road. He said, I'm not sure if it's an upgrade. We've changed from trailer trash to pond scum.
I miss the dinners after the meetings. The collegiality that we used to enjoy. But now you can't do that. It's too bad.
Can't do
You can if you don't discuss the topics.
It was too many people together.
Together, meaning,
Yeah, yeah, anticipated quorum, so you'd have to
It
post
looked,
it.
it looked.
oh,
Yeah.
it looks bad, right?
So we used to go to, what's that nice place?
Passports?
No,
Halibut Point.
Hollis Point.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
right, okay.
Best hamburger.
Yeah.
Can I have 2 figures of scotch?
Yes. Yeah, it was fun. We had a good time. We had a good time. No, yes, no, I don't have this on my t-shirts.
All right, everyone, well, thank you for your time
Thank you.
today.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Do you need me to, I don't know what else you have on the agenda, but is there anything I can help with?
No, I think we're good. It's a John Judd plan that we're giving a consent agenda approval to, but the reason that is
Baby,
because
on his arm.
he's still working on the plan because I'm asking him to move the
I couldn't
collection.
believe it.
Close to
That he would have to hold on. So that,
All right.
it's about right.
All right,
By right on the dune. Bye, Dan.
All right, take care, everyone.
Say hi to Martha.
Yep, we'll do.
consent agenda for seeing Magnolia.
Yes. I've nearly approved this plan. The only thing I'm waiting for is for John Judd to revise the plan. To move the collection or collection tray for the Presby closer to the box so that they might get a reduction. But then again, this is a multifamily and I think we don't give reductions if it's a multifamily. So they're gonna be stuck with court
It's
inspections.
20 bedroom,
It's 20
Yeah, that's the one in Magnolia.
right, yeah.
That's your probably stay, yeah.
So I put on the agenda for consent to setbacks that you've allowed the staff to grant.
Right.
So long as I let you know. Each area setback to foundation, 12 feet where 20 feet required, and each area to street line, 8 feet where 10 feet
And
required.
there'd be HGV barriers, right?
Yes,
When you say street line, property line?
I think it's the property line.
Okay.
Do they own to the street?
Right, but it's a public street, so it would be not to the medium line, it would be just to the street line.
Or whatever the record plans
Right.
indicate. Okay,
And I have the plans electronically if anybody wants to look at them. I can hold them up.
So it's the second building, isn't it, in that site?
I think it's just one.
There's a large lot in the center and a
Well, yeah, there's this,
freestanding house.
well, the system was in the front. And I remember the soils there were really weird and there was this huge, we thought it might be ledge or whaleback.
Yeah.
And actually Mary Godwin was there.
Yeah, there
And
was. In the past.
Peter Veneman came out from UMass.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a soil person, bless him. And they cracked it and it was just this huge egg. You know, so it was a boulder and, you know, they were able to put the system in there. And towards Butler, the soils became a little bit funky. But they were better when you got more towards Magnolia Square.
Yeah,
And then there was some problems with the wall by Butler because they didn't have it designed as a structural engineer. And it needed to be designed by structural engineer. And then, as I think I said in the past, the pumps were in the back parking area, and I think there is another building.
that's what
But
I'm
I'm not
saying.
sure if that's a laundry or,
I think it's residents.
it could be.
Yeah.
Could be, right. But
It's 16 in one and then 4 in the other to make it
Could
20.
be, right,
Thing.
could be, yeah, because everything sort of came into the
Yeah,
pump chambers there. And
you were worried about cars being able to get onto it.
and the problem, one of the pumps wasn't working and the pump chamber was full of effluent and the installer jumped down into the pump chamber.
oh. You could die.
It started moving all the pumps and things around and reconnecting all the electrical things. I'm going, you know, it's getting away. And you got it to work, but you know,
It's an art to be in that profession.
well, I mean, I mean, you must really like your work.
It's like Ross Lane had a pipe, always lit,
He did.
smoke going right out of his nose.
Right.
He could do anything.
Right.
You remember him, Ross Lane?
Very,
That's
very,
familiar.
very much. He was one of my father's best friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The nice man. Manasco. He used to keep a tanker truck in his backyard to off pump all of the stuff out of his collection. So there was, I don't know, 20,000 gallons of sewer sitting in a tank downtown Manasco.
He actually had his pump truck wasn't a regular tank. It was from a boiler. So it was like very much heavier
Oh, dear.
than all the other ones. So we go around the corner and the wheels would come off the ground on one side of it.
Yes,
That's crazy.
yeah.
I'm looking at 16 Magnolia, it's Magnolia Ave. This is the proposed leach field in the front yard. It's replacing an infiltrator system.
And there is the second building.
It's Presby system.
Right.
Okay.
So here's the main building, number 16, and then in the back, there's a trash enclosure, planter, septic tanks existing will stay. And I think that's it on this building. Butler Ave is right here,
Right,
Okay.
but maybe there's an existing dwelling over here, number
That's it.
4,
that's it, yeah,
but that's not part of this septic.
that's right, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It's not, oh, okay.
Right, and those are the two tanks that have, and that pump chamber is the one the guy jumped down on. Yeah,
Right. Thanks, Leslie.
And so he proposed the
Oh, tray on the
a
end.
tray over here, proposed collection tray, but it's not it's not in line with one that comes straight from the D box. It's actually at the very end of one of the lines.
Yeah, so that area won't get effluent until
Yeah,
a long time.
if it's working properly. I mean, if you kill the biomat. And you have carryover,
Right. Yeah,
right, then we'll go directly there,
right.
yeah, so. I mean, that's the good thing about it, is it tells you that,
That's true. But yeah. But if we're looking for effluent samples,
right,
we
but.
probably want to put it,
But if you think of it, I'd say, if it was in your kitchen, you have ground fault interrupter switches. If it trips, it shows you there's something wrong in your
Right.
kitchen. If this trips and you're getting effluent, maybe there's something wrong.
right.
Yeah.
But the inspection report should tell us that as well, no? I'm only saying it
In
because,
theory,
right,
you're right, but I'm saying, in reality, if you're getting something there,
right. But we probably want to consistently say, put the tray by the D box, right?
probably, right,
that's at least the guidance we're getting from Clearwater,
well, why not try it,
yeah,
right?
Makes sense.
so.
Good.
All right, sanitarian report.
Sanitarian report. I'm happy to report that 22 Beechcroft has connected to sewer. And the cesspool, and they're working on the other two. And when I was there about a week ago, I was told it'll be a couple weeks before we'll have you back out to do the next one. And it's because they need plumbers and they need electricians and it's a whole process, so.
Seems like they updated the board at the last meeting. So they're under enforcement order from the Board of Health as well, just so you guys to have it done.
David, any follow-up on the people dumping over the fence?
So after that, you brought it to my attention, I brought it back to Bree. Forget exactly what happened, but it's in her court. She's the one who is, because it's a nuisance. It's not septic, it's a nuisance. So it's in her. And I'm sorry, I don't have a better update for you, because I should have been prepared that you might ask this, but
The city's got $250,000 almost into this question. For pollution in the creek.
well, it doesn't exactly go into the creek. It's not like the creek just runs there. It's a wetland that's associated with the creek,
That's
but it's not like it's all just water.
That's right.
But
Also, I have a vested interest in this because I've been thinking since day one that it was somebody dumping, I said a porta potty.
Right.
A contractor who owned his own porta potty. Not a city porta potty, but a contractor, and to avoid the expense of taking it was served just to be dumping, and so it's a similar situation.
right.
I'm pleased to see that it's possible.
I will follow up with Bree again for the latest.
It certainly explains the stratospheric climb and then the drop back to normal numbers.
Like, I think we're always looking for a silver bullet for these things, and the truth is, the problem is silver buckshot. You know,
Yeah.
there are just so many different things that are all
Yeah, but-
contributing to it. And one thing, you know, the easier things, the low hanging fruit, if you will,
Yeah.
is to deal with something like this,
Right.
right? Dealing with,
Such an investment in the natural possibilities of all the investigations that have gone and the time and the money and the effort, energy and the political costs to all people, that the persistence of this and the unhappy people in the city that because they could not use that creek. This is as close as I think you've come to a solution. This is, somebody came to you.
Well, I think in order to understand what happens is if you look at this as if it's a detention basin for a very large watershed, there are multiple sources, including stormwater runoff, animal contributions,
Yes.
as well as potential infrastructure things like maybe some exfiltration from some sewer lines.
Yeah.
And DEP does allow a certain amount of exfiltration from sewer lines.
Mhm.
So that also could be a contributing
Yep.
factor, as well as maybe some failing on-site septic systems, as well as best management practices not being held by people with porta potties. And if it's a detention basin that doesn't flush all that well,
That's right.
it, and it only has a little bit of dilution from incoming tides, and that's what happens here. All of the salt marsh there has changed dramatically in my lifetime.
Mhm.
It used to be lower salt marsh, now it's all upper salt marsh. And so the flushing characteristics are a lot different. It gets more water coming from upstream than it does coming from the ocean.
Right.
And that creates an issue. And when we're looking at water quality, things in a lot of our shellfish areas, people don't really take into account, flushing characteristics, and that it's a very important issue, the ability to do that. And I think people haven't really grasped that.
I will follow up with Bree and Gabby again. I followed up with both of them last time.
Great.
We are just so, it's incredible how the amount of complaints and just the workload,
Yeah.
it's just huge. So it's understandable that not everything is getting done.
Yeah,
But this maybe I need to remind them that maybe it's worth putting to the top of the pile.
putting it on the front burner.
Do you have anything else, Leslie?
I don't.
Can move to concerns of the board and advisors to the board.
You've heard them all.
I think we should have snacks.
How about pizza?
How
Pizza.
about if
eating
we went to
board.
Thai food, before it closes?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Are you getting any sleep?
No.
It's
getting better.
Yeah, my nieces just had a second, they have a 2-year-old and now a brand new baby. Wow.
Oh, wow.
He's alive. Sometimes you
Now, the little one's better than my son, and she's younger, and it's interesting how much different she is.
Yeah.
That's. One wakes the other up, we're always awake. It's fun.
Yeah,
I did want to bring up the whole Presby
yeah,
inspection port thing and monitoring and maintenance of Presbys. I've designed a lot of them, I've seen them installed. I think there were issues with the technology in the past. I know they redesigned it after the first, there was issues early on.
yes.
And they tweaked the system, and I haven't seen any issues with them. Premature failure. I agree with Dan's sentiment that we shouldn't be requiring quarterly visits to go out and look at an inspection port. And I don't know the whole sampling thing. I know that started, I think, when I was the health agent, I think. I know it's not a regulation, but I think it's been a policy that we require the sampling ports under the Presbys.
Yes.
I could be wrong on that, but
No, we wouldn't approve the system until they put it on.
right,
Just because it was an outlier, it was the only system going in that could
Yeah.
be tested.
right. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's worth discussing.
The reasoning for doing it was emotional more than scientific.
Yeah, so,
You weren't dealing with scientists.
right, and we have Clearwater who we know does good work, and they're
Yeah.
telling us that you can't sample these things very reliably. And then we're forcing them to come out and bill these homeowners $300-400 to look at an inspection port and get a bad sample. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think the sampling should be done.
It's not quarterly.
Right.
But I think the sampling is being done, required to be done quarterly. Is that correct, at the moment?
Yeah.
Correct, right?
So, I
And,
don't know,
and is it 2 years? Then they can come back and ask?
One.
1 year.
1 year of good results, so under the state thresholds.
But if I'm hearing correctly, this system, the concept of this system falls out of all the other systems, and therefore it ought to have different
What?
control regulations on it.
Similar to an Elgin, there's a couple systems like
Yeah.
Presby now that are more passive,
Right.
Yeah,
there are a few others.
and that they shouldn't be held to the same standards because they're really are different.
Yeah, but I do see the concern that we wanna know how they're functioning,
Yes,
but we also don't have a good ability to do that right now.
and that's the thing we challenged Presby on, was we don't understand how this system works. It
Right.
doesn't sound complicated enough to be effective,
But we don't,
and it turns out we were wrong.
No, not really, but as he said, initially
We were,
Presby's,
we were doubting Thomas.
well, originally, there were problems with the Presby system.
Okay,
And I saw
Yeah.
a number of them fail,
okay,
and they had problems, but then they changed, so your skepticism was well founded,
okay,
right? But now it may be time to pivot a little bit.
yes,
And one of the pivots is what Leslie suggested, is to put the sampling port a little bit further. My
yeah,
suggestion would be, see how that works. If that doesn't work, maybe do away with the effluent testing,
yes.
the component part. But let's see how that works
I agree with
first.
you.
If that doesn't work, then maybe just do away with the
So
effluent.
this is on a Presby system you're speaking.
Or any passive,
Okay,
right?
okay. You understand much better the mechanism, what's going on.
No, I think you understand it, osmosis.
and I know there's probably a lot of Presbys out there too that don't have the inspection port.
No,
Cause it was before we adopted that policy.
no.
You know,
no,
No, I
No,
think they
they're-
all do.
no, they don't, no, they don't,
yes, we do.
no, they don't. I'm certain,
One, maybe a two.
I'm certain that when I, almost certain when I
There's
was,
one in Magnolia, in a driveway
Right.
because,
On
that
Shore-
doesn't have.
no, but
Right,
before I,
on Shore Road,
before I
Yeah,
was,
exactly, and we were horrified,
right. Tom Webster put it in.
yeah.
Right.
And, yeah, when we dropped the hammer,
well, I know, I don't think it wasn't required until,
it wasn't, until we discovered that one
Right.
on Shore
Okay.
Road.
okay,
We dropped the hammer on it, and and we kind of pleased ourselves by saying that they redesigned this thing because we insisted they do. That's probably not true, but that's what we told ourselves.
right,
Right.
I was, well. I
And
was-
they came back with a port, but obviously they put the port in it first.
Okay.
But the
we were-
import is gone.
Have you seen-
Here or not at all?
No,
I think we'll see how it,
Thor, you've seen other systems that I just don't know about, probably.
yeah, like the Elgin is one, I
Oh,
know,
I don't know about the other, but
Yeah.
have you seen other Presbys that don't have a test port?
well, they're not required, we're like the only town that is requiring the.
The effluent.
So there's two versions of, there's actually three versions of Presbys. One is the conventional Presby, 6 inches of sand, Presby sand beneath the system.
Yep,
You get a 40% reduction in the field size.
yep,
If you do an advanced Presby, use 12 inches of sand, you can get a 50% reduction. So that extra 10% requires you to install the inspection port.
okay,
But you could do the 40% with no inspection port. So we've never designed a Presby with an inspection port. I'm sorry, sampling port.
but the Presbys that go in,
Yeah, sorry.
but the ones that come in to Gloucester
Right, have to have them.
have to have.
So, but,
inspection
and we've said you could do either technology, so typically it's easier to do the regular enviroseptic piping with the inspection port.
Yeah.
But if you ever needed the 50% size reduction,
Right,
you could do 12 inches of sand, advanced pipe,
and in Gloucester, an inspection port,
sampling, yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
The inspection port is important because, you can
Yep.
see, and if there's odors
Yes,
and levels and
all that,
stuff like that, so they have that anyway.
Right.
In the Presby and in the Elgin. So
I see,
Correct.
so there are other ways of,
Elgin is new to me, I don't know.
it's been around a long time,
Yeah.
it really has been.
So when we see systems like that don't have the technology, are we gonna, like for dance, are we saying that they need to install a sampling port? Is that where we were?
He's gonna he's gonna put one, he's gonna probably get the Presby sampling.
Right, figure,
Sampling tray.
Right.
And have that put
put
underneath
something
it.
in, okay.
Yeah, I
In the early
think,
days
see how
of
this works,
this
if it doesn't work,
meeting,
just do away with the
engineers would come
I agree.
and tout the
Then you're on-
newest and the latest and the
and
greatest.
you're on steady ground.
Yeah.
It was a
I
whole
agree.
educational
I
component
agree.
for us.
Yeah.
To inform us of stuff. The same, in the early days of septic review, part of the program was to encourage engineers with the newest and the latest and the greatest to
Sure.
come here to do a dog and pony. To inform us of new systems
Right.
that they were coming.
But then I think there was greater leverage because of the consent decree.
Yes,
And now there's less leverage.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you need to back off to almost where the planning board or the conservation commission is, that you don't want to design the system
True.
for them.
yes.
In the past, because there was more leverage because of the consent decree.
Yeah.
I think the Board of Health could design things to a greater degree than is usual in municipal government.
Yeah, we would just say, you know, that's not enough of a system, go away and come back with something else.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely had a lot more leeway.
Yes,
Yeah, and rightly so,
but they also found that it increased sales of their technology in Gloucester too.
true,
We can recommend.
that's true, you know, I remember, you know, it was Sigmund, Hollister Sigmund coming just to talk to me about Singular and everything else, I mean.
Right.
You know, people would come and talk to you about, you know, their technology.
Yes,
And,
and I would get invited to conferences too, to
Right.
come in and I'd go.
Right.
And learn a lot.
right, yeah,
Okay.
So, yeah, let us know how that works out with the sampling for it.
Yep.
And, yeah,
you know, that's. I think eventually that will happen.
yeah, I guess. My concern too is, you know, we're gonna have, there's a lot of systems with the sampling port in the wrong place, and they're never gonna get a sample that they can reduce their monitoring.
Right,
So that's, so in that respect, I don't think it makes sense to have people come 4 times a year either.
So I could send an email
You know what I
to
mean?
Clearwater and say, if you're unable to get any samples at all, after a year, we would allow you to
Right.
reduce the
And
frequency.
you know the ones to look like old ones that like we didn't know where to put the port, like where it was kind of new and.
You know, just logically, if you can't get the samples, they're not gonna be high.
Right,
It's true.
yeah, so,
So I would say, you know, especially if people reach out like
twice a year?
I'm sure.
twice a year is, yeah, twice a year is. What we would allow in the reduction.
Yeah, because then you've got your summer resident and your winter tenant or other way around.
Would you see my go?
Yeah,
I'm just saying this is-
I think that section could be-
It's huge expense to homeowner.
It's not cheap to have them come out.
What's that?
It's usually, you know, $400 or $500.
right, but what's a sewer bill a year?
It's-
I agree.
Yes, it is.
But they're also paying for the install of the system and, you know what I mean, like over time.
But you're also paying for a sewer connect too.
True, but the
You
system,
know,
but a system's 50, 60 grand. It's just-
Right, but I paid 40, you know, from.
Did you really?
For ticket tech.
Sure.
To sewer.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And
Jeez.
$6,500 to go from my driveway to the house.
How much?
$6,500.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on a third of an
It's
acre.
the most unnecessary expense.
It was about from here to
I
the
agree.
wall.
I mean, if we can't get a sample, we shouldn't.
It was,
But
do
the idea
you
is you
want to be
sample it.
connected
We
or
were
don't
required
you?
4 a year,
Yeah.
until they can use their samples or.
Wow.
If we can't sample it.
Well, we had,
Then
we
why
had,
are- why
we
are-
were
why are we
phase one,
required
so we
4
had
times?
I'm
80
wondering
or
if this could be
85%
just changed by adding something, where it says the system is set.
so the betterment maybe wasn't
monitoring.
so bad,
Huh?
the betterment maybe wasn't so bad
Betterment was
Monitoring.
15,000, I
The
think,
results would have to.
Something like that.
average.
versus 40.
and then half again to go
Just by
from the
putting that in. there
driveway to the house.
Would allow you to, you know,
Wow.
if you were just doing the monitoring, physical without the effluent.
Right.
You could ask for it.
Yes.
To city sewer.
Yeah, can you just write, scribble it on
Yes.
here and we'll accept it?
No, but I'm.
No, yeah, I know, it's just,
I mean, in the future.
I agree with you, yeah, for sure, we should.
Pipe is.
We should.
Yeah.
We'll see how the Presby board works, but it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work, yeah,
But I'm just thinking that would be
Yeah.
a thing to do.
yeah,
You want to adjourn after mentioning the date of the next meeting?
yeah, I need to go.
Yeah, it was.
When is the next meeting?
When did they put in
June
sewer?
27th at 4 P.M.
Dave,
The next.
June 27th.
Yeah, that's
4
4
p.m.
p.m. Yep, this is what I have.
Thank you, Leslie.
And do
Dave,
you want
when
to
did they put
adjourn?
in?
Motion,
phase
motion to
one
adjourn.
sewer?
So moved.
Okay. Thor, yes. All in favor? Thor, yes.
Yes. Eric, yes.
So we're adjourned.
June
When
what?
was phase one of the
June
sewer?
27th.
What year?
4 p.m. 4 p.m.
Oh, 4 p.m.
Thank you, Leslie.
Sure.
You said 4 p.m.
4 P.M.
80.
And I don't think the port's gonna work.
9, 8?
It's just gonna
It was
fail.
late 80s.
That part of the system's just gonna fail
Okay.
What are you talking about
for the
now?
Presby's.
Continue later.
I think it's just gonna fail and then the effluent's gonna keep
I want
migrating,
to see 80,
migrating down
89.
Yeah,
laterals,
that's
or
right.
the tubes,
So you're
whatever.
saying if you
Yes,
put
that's
the
what I
collection port close to the D box,
Yeah.
you'll get effluent first year, but then it will stop.
Right, so I'll be curious to see how that works, but
Yep.
yeah, I think it will. It's just
When's
gonna
that date? To be sure it's in my book.
probably end up just migrating.
But yeah, so
When's
so
that?
and say,
June
I
27th.
mean, doesn't even matter where they put them going forward,
Yeah,
just
4
make
p.m.
sure to give them the reduction.
And eventually
Change things.
change things to just inspect it twice a year.